Well, very good. Thank you for being here. Thank you this afternoon. My name is David Gordon. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking to you about considerations for selecting hydrogen compression equipment. And I didn't say it, but I'm specifically talking about the more higher pressure compression equipment. Um, I'm the global product manager at Haskell. Been there for over 20 years, handling various high pressure gas applications. I'm going to talk about a few different types of compression equipment that's out there right now. First I'll talk about is reciprocating compressors. There's a number of advantages to them. They can go up to about 500 bar, and there's some that'll go even higher than that. They are available with oil-free designs that will reduce the likelihood of contamination of the hydrogen from the oil. They are efficient, and they have relatively low maintenance requirements. Some of the disadvantages, they tend to have a very large footprint. They have, because of the low unswept volume, or large unswept volume, I mean, they tend to have require lower gas compression ratios, which means more stages of compression required. They can be noisy. They also cannot be started under load. They have to be unloaded before they can be started. And they're typically designed for a very narrow supply pressure for the gas coming into it. So you have to define a pretty narrow inlet pressure when you're selecting a compressor. And they may also require a bypass loop when there's no demand for hydrogen downstream. Since they can't be loaded rather, you need to just do a bypass so the compressor can keep running during that idle period. And they produce a lot of heat, substantially above the adiabatic heat that's generated from compressing the gas. And the maintenance on these can be quite specialized. Another compressor that's out there is the diaphragm compressor. And if you're not familiar with it, on that schematic there or drawing there, the red would represent high pressure oil, the blue would represent hydrogen gas, and that black line between them is a metal diaphragm. So when you're compressing the gas, the oil pushes that diaphragm up and compresses the gas. They can go up to about 900 bar. One of the nice things about this type of technology is it maintains very high gas cleanliness. It's a leak-tight design. You don't typically get leakage of the gas outside of the compressor. They're efficient, and because of the lower unswept volume, you can go to higher gas compression ratios, which means fewer stages of compression required to get from low pressure to high pressure. On the other side, they do tend to have a large footprint. The capital cost can be very high. They can be noisy. They also cannot start under load, and they're also designed for a relatively narrow supply pressure, and they do have very high oil pressure in there. If you want a gas at 900 bar, the pressure of the oil has to be 900 bar. They may also require a bypass loop, and they can also produce a lot of heat. And the maintenance on these can be very specialized, requiring very specialized equipment. Next one I'm going to talk about is the hydraulically driven gas booster. Now, in full disclosure, this is a product that Haskell manufactures. It was first developed by Haskell in the 1950s to support the launch operations at NASA as they were ramping up for the space program. We can generate pressures up to 1,000 bar with these. Hydrogen can be kept clean with proper sealing technologies. And these can be very efficient, especially as the developments of higher and higher efficient hydraulic power units have hit the market. They allow these systems to operate very efficiently. We have a very small unswept volume, so we can go to higher gas compression ratios. Again, fewer stages of compression can be required. These can start under load, so no bypass loop is required. They can operate with a much broader supply gas pressure, so if you have a varying gas supply pressure, these might be a better solution for you. They're quieter than comparable horsepower or kilowatt mechanical compressors. And the service is simple and does not really require any real specialized equipment. These do produce a lot of heat, but again, as I mentioned, as the efficiencies of the power units has gone up, that amount of heat that's generated has gone down. It's outside of the adiabatic heat of the compressing the hydrogen. And they do have a large volume of hydraulic oil. Typically, the pressure of the oil during inside the booster is around 150 to 200 bar. Now, some of the considerations when selecting equipment. Source of your hydrogen. Your typical choices are going to be either on-site generation, where you're using an electrolyzer or a steam methane reformer, tube trailers where it's trucked in, or liquid hydrogen. If you're looking at on-site generation, electrolyzer is going to require a very large electrical service. The SMR is going to require power and compressed natural gas to operate it, and then both require significant conditioning of the hydrogen after it comes out of it. And the the amount of H2 you get out of the system is going to be limited to what it was designed for. If you design it for 500 kilograms a day and later on you realize you want more than that, you're going to have to buy more equipment. One of the advantages, it's always available whenever you need it, the equipment's there. And these typically deliver a pretty constant delivery pressure. Tube trailers, a minimal capital expense. You can draw the hydrogen off that tube trailer as quickly as you want to. Typically, it's delivered at around 200 bar, but now they are developing tube trailers that go to substantially higher pressures than that. But as you use the hydrogen in that tube trailer, the pressure will go down. So you do have to make sure your system is designed to accommodate a fluctuating supply pressure. And delays in delivery can shut down operation. That's been a real challenge in California, where I'm from, that stations have had to shut down because they could not get hydrogen. Liquid hydrogen, it's got to be locally available to be able to use it. If it's not used quickly enough, you have to worry about losses from boil off. The hydrogen will boil off from the liquid, and that can be substantial losses, or you need to put a capture system to recover that lost hydrogen to inject it back into the vapor part of the system. And if you want to get up to 700 bar fills, you typically need a compressor. The cryo pumps can go to that higher pressure, but they tend to be lower efficiencies at those higher pressures. And once again, delays in delivery can shut down the operation. Location. Big thing there is available space and acceptable sound levels. With a reciprocating compressor, that can require a very large footprint, and they can be quite noisy. So if it's in a sensitive area, such as in a commercial area or a neighborhood or a mall or something like that, that could be a real problem, so you'd need substantial soundproofing. Diaphragm compressors are very much the same. They require a large footprint, and the surface equipment on a diaphragm compressor, especially for the big ones, can be quite large, and you have that same concern about noise. Hydraulically driven booster, we have a smaller footprint for the power unit and for the booster, at least per kilowatt. It can be a smaller footprint, and it's less noisy, so the need for sound attenuation will be substantially less if it's needed at all. Auxiliary equipment. In your operation, you're probably going to need chillers, heat exchangers, and compressed air compressors. Chillers to provide coolant to cool the compressed hydrogen. The vast majority of the coolant is going to be used for compressing the hydrogen that's heated up while it's compressed. But you're also going to need coolant to cool the compressors. Probably about a quarter to a third of the cooling will be for cooling the compressors. You're going to need heat exchangers to cool that hydrogen off. You're going to need a heat exchanger between each stage, and if your hydrogen is coming in warm, especially off of an electrolyzer, an SMR, you may need to pre-cool it before it's compressed. And then oil heat exchangers are also necessary for your compression equipment, although those are probably included with the compressors. And then this is something that gets forgotten about a lot of time, compressed air compressors. A lot of the auxiliary equipment and some of the compressor systems frequently need compressed air to operate the control valves and other valves inside the system. Make sure that compressor you get is large enough for your use point. You're probably going to need a dryer with it also. And don't economize here. As working at Haskell, I've dealt with a lot of compressors, and people that economize on their compressors, they come to regret it in the long run. So make sure you get a good rotary screw or better compressor for your system. Controls are also something that need to be considered. You're probably going to have a master station control, and then you're probably going to have controls for the individual components that'll be slaved back to the master control. Some of the things you might want to consider is, do you want to have the ability to monitor the equipment, the station from off-site, and do you want the ability to remotely change parameters from off-site if you see something you don't like or you want to change without having to go back to the station to make that change. Now, recently, Haskell started offering a new technology for gas compression equipment. It's a servo-driven motor, a servo motor-driven booster. We're selling it now. It's called the Q-Drive. We're using a very similar gas compression technology to what we're using our hydraulically driven gas boosters. But instead of a hydraulic drive, we're using a servo motor. This is kind of an example right here. In the middle of it, we have a servo motor which is turning a reciprocating or ball screw. That ball screw is what pushes on our pistons to push the gas pistons back and forth. There's a lot of advantages to operating this way. It's a very efficient servo motor. We're operating 94 to 95% efficiency on that motor itself. Because of that high efficiency, we have much lower cooling requirements. We have less cooling required to cool the compressor off now, and most of your cooling is going to go to the hydrogen. This unit can also start under load, and it can start and stop at any time with no issues right there. And because there's no power required when we're idling, if you don't run 100%, the lower your duty cycle is, the higher the efficiency is, because it's not using power while you're not compressing, while all the other technologies out there, because of the bypass loops, still have to draw power when you're not compressing gas. It also has no high pressure hydraulic oil, just about a small amount of oil at less than 30 psi. These are quiet, less than 77 decibels. For the amount of gas coming out of it, it has a very small footprint. We can handle very high purity gases. And the controllability of the servo motor gives us some unique opportunities. We can adjust the cycle rate. Obviously, normally you're going to operate pretty close to full rate, but there's over 30 sensors measuring forces, temperatures, and pressures, and that's being monitored by the controls. So if the control sees something it doesn't like a gas section starting to warm up, instead of shutting the system down, it will just slow it down a little bit, allow it to cool back up, and then speed it back up. And a lot of times the operator never knows that the control is making adjustments to keep it running as efficient as possible. We also have a minimal amount of unswept volume, which allows us to have higher gas compression ratios and to need fewer stages to get from low pressure to high pressure. Go. And so currently the Q-Drive I'm describing is only available for non-hazard environments with non-hazardous gases. We are developing what we call the Q-Drive X, and it will be rated for use with hydrogen and in hazardous environments. It'll have more horsepower. We'll have up to 3 stages of compression in there, and it's being designed to have at least 6 months of gas section seal life. And it will have that same type of control that I was just discussing. We do have a paper that we've written on high pressure gas, comparing high pressure gas equipment. And if you can real quick scan this QR code, you can get it, or come by our booth and we can help you download it there. We are at Haskell's at stand B42. Please come by, talk to me more about this. Any other questions you have, we'd be loving, help you download that white paper, and we'd be happy to help you out. Thank you for your time and consideration. Enjoy the rest of the day at the show here.